Terrific. Welcome again, everybody. And we're delighted today to have Terry and Jerry here from the Civic Learning Council, the Terry and Jerry Show, to present today. And I know they'll probably share a little bit about themselves and the Learning Council. I just wanted to mention that their organization has a mission to promote and support the people of Washington in becoming more knowledgeable and engaged lifelong participants in democracy. Civic education, civic literacy is a priority for our American 250 work. It was sort of called out by our state commission, and so we're delighted that this group of folks is sort of working on this project to help museums and K-12 teachers engage students in thinking about democracy. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Terry and or Jerry to take it away.
Thank you, Allison.
Did that work? Can we see it? Thumbs up. All right.
Yes. Good job.
Okay, thanks.
So we'll do a quick introduction of ourselves. Then we're going to ask, just to warn you, to do have you very quickly via chat introduce yourselves and talk about why you're here and kind of what you want to take away. We have actually planned what we're going to do, but it's always good to know sort of going into it if that plan meets with the sorts of things that you are interested in. So Jerry, the next slide.
Yep, maybe.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be Zoom without a frozen screen. So let's see. Let me try this again. Just a moment. Please hold. Okay, and how about now?
There it is.
Yes.
First slide.
Yep, first slide. It likes the first slide. Okay.
Okay.
Well, so let's let me try something else here. Just a second. Apologies, everybody. We even we did a test run before.
Yeah. And believe it or not, Jerry was the expert here, so he got chosen for this test.
I did. I set high expectations high.
He was all talk, apparently.
And I see a few people have already entered in a brief introduction of themselves while we're experiencing technical difficulties. Might be really helpful just to sort of, what are you? You could be anywhere during this beautiful hour in the summer, and you chose to be here. So we're happy about that, and kind of would like to know what you're looking for in this presentation, as specific or as broad as you're interested in. Sort of why did you show up? Go ahead and if you'd enter that in the chat, and as soon as Jerry gets to the next slide.
So fun. Well, I think you're gonna have to give it a go. Terry, mine is not working.
Okay, well, last time I just shared far too much information, but I will let's see, I want this one, I believe.
There we go.
Hey, you can see it?
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll see if this continues. So just a quick introduction of ourselves. I am emeritus professor at the University of Puget Sound. I specialized in social studies education and in civics education, and specifically K through 12. I am a member of the Washington State Learning Council, this august group who we focus on supporting high quality civic learning throughout the state of Washington. I'm also co-author with Walter Parker of social studies in elementary education. And so very, very happy to be here with this august group. And Jerry.
Yeah, so hey everybody, I'm Jerry Price. I am the Vice President of Washington Civic Learning Council. I'm also Vice President, sort of accidentally at the same time, of the Washington State Council for the Social Studies. Some of you may have presented at those conferences. We have one coming up in the fall. And then I'm also a curriculum developer at Muckleshoot Tribal School. And it doesn't say it on here, but I was at the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction for 5 years and did serve on the Washington State Historical Society's board as a representative of Superintendent Rakedahl. So, and between us, we have 70-ish, 80-ish years of experience in the public sector. We won't talk about that though. So,
but it's a lot. It's a lot.
Plenty.
I just give you a quick little background while you're typing in your reasons for being here, a reason that we are here. The Civic Learning Council met and talked about how can we support America 250. And what we were particularly interested in schools, and we looked at the sort of range of what teachers might do K-12, and we saw that there's quite a bit of things that they could be doing, but in the primary grades, in the lowest grades, there is a real dearth of information. There's very, very little available to teachers. And so we thought that that might be a place where we could step in and provide some help. And that too, we were excited that the Washington State History Museum was involved in this, taking the lead in this process. And we thought, well, what if we created something that primary age teachers could do that might connect to museums and local communities? Because we saw some excellent connections. And so that was our goal, is to provide something for primary age students to participate in that would be exciting and all of that, and that would connect with museums. So that's what we're out for. And then Jerry, have you had a chance to look at the chat to see if there's any themes or?
Just a lot of, we're always looking for programming ideas. We're looking for ways to connect to America 250. There's quite a bit, and then just sort of getting a feel for what's happening statewide. Yep.
Okay. Well, but specifically where we're going to go is we're going to talk about what we're calling best practices for dealing with artifacts with younger grades. And so some specific things that happen when you're dealing with really little kids. And then we're going to do a little trial just to warn you. We're going to ask you to participate as opposed to just being talked to. And then we will go back into talk to mode, and we will be thinking about the specific curriculum that we have developed. So just a few things to think about as if you have the opportunity to work with younger kids. The leader's role in this, in a task when you're dealing with artifacts, is to generate interest. The artifacts, so we want to choose an artifact that is inherently interesting, and honestly, most artifacts are. If we take the time to look at them, they really are interesting. And so, as I said, when we take the time to look at them, generating interest begins with students observing closely. And then one of the things that people working with young children who aren't experienced working with young children tend to do is just talk to them, as opposed to listen to them. And there's this term in learning theory that's called bearing the cognitive load. And who's doing the thinking in this situation? And the leader's role when we're helping kids interact with an artifact is to move the cognitive load to them, help them to do the thinking and not do it for them. Because little kids, really little kids, are just as smart as anybody else. They are less skilled. They can't read and write at the same sorts of levels, and they are less experienced, but they're just as smart. So let them be smart and let them think. And that's the hardest thing to do when you're working with the kids, is to sort of step back and say, okay, I'm just going to try to keep the conversation going. And so some ways to do this. So the artifacts that we've included in this are all artifacts that do not require reading. So they're all visual artifacts. So here are just some questions that have been suggested by Library of Congress and others for ways to engage with artifacts. Sort of just, what do you notice? We're trying to get them to notice things and to see things that are just on a first blush they might not see. I remember going to the Smithsonian and just being immersed in these incredible displays, and hardly having time to go from one to another. And a school group came by, and they just sort of, if there was something to tap, they tapped it, and then they kept going. And it was, oh my gosh, look at what you are missing. And so just to stop and notice is this huge thing. And if we can get them to notice, we can usually help them be interested. Another question is, let's see, for some reason I'm not going, there we go. Oh, what do you wonder about? as you look at this artifact, what do you wonder about? And so we notice things, and then we notice things that we might not understand, because it's in that space where we don't understand that we start to be open to learning. And so we want that there. And then, what do you know about this? And what do you wish you knew about this? So the what do you know about this question it's a way to help them to generate their pre-existing information. And sometimes it will be nothing. But my experience with really little kids is there's always something that they believe that they know about this. So we let them tell us about that. We start to wonder, we start to get interested, and that if we can generate interest, and people tend to sort of skip past this because, we want to get to the good stuff. But in fact, this is the good stuff. If we can help them to be interested, then the rest is easy. The rest is just really easy, because these things will happen. But if they're not interested, if they don't see this as valuable and something to do, then the rest of the lesson will be a struggle, and we turn into disciplinarians and managers, as opposed to people who are engaged in really thinking about this historical information. And how cool is that? So continuing on with this one is we pose questions and invite questions like, what do you think? What do you think that might be about? Why is that happening? And one of the things that's also really difficult when we're working with kids is we often know the answer. And sometimes the worst thing you can do is provide the answer. Sometimes you need to tell them because they're just going to perseverate. And so this is a judgment piece that you do. But you have to be willing to leave the questions unanswered and trust that over the course of this investigation, things will become clear, and they will start to learn things they didn't anticipate because you didn't step in and shut down the questioning by providing an answer that was a simple answer. So, and some ways to do all of this is when your job is to facilitate the discussion. It's not to hand them a whole bunch of information. It's to get them talking. Ideally, in classrooms, what we want to do is we want to have kids talking as much as the adults are. And so that means we step back from sort of telling them things to try to find out what they mean, and to accept everything. And this is tough because sometimes they'll say things that are really out of left field. But if you start sanctioning too much, and sometimes you just have to sanction, okay, but in general you accept all, and if you sanction too much, you shut down the conversation. Because it's amazing when a child will say something and we take that seriously and we accept it, we'll find out that there really were connections underneath it, or it will spark understanding from another student that takes us to a place we couldn't have imagined going. So I'd recommend that. And then ultimately, though, we want to bring them back to the source, because what little kids will want to do is tell you stories. They'll tell you about their dog that died. They'll tell you about all these things that happen that are kind of tangential to what's here. But we want to keep coming back to the source. Things like, what about the photograph tells you of that? Where do you see that in the photograph? Keep bringing them back, that we are here to talk about this artifact. And that doesn't mean I'm going to, discipline you because you didn't talk about the artifact, but I'm going to very gently and carefully set the expectation that we're talking about this. And so, and I'm going to, what is amazing to me is how often when I think, oh my gosh, I have no idea where that came from, that is completely unrelated. And I'll stop myself and I'll say, what in the photograph tells you that? And the kid will point to this thing that I never noticed and I never thought of. And in fact, it's genius. So we tend to think we understand what they're saying, why they say it, but we don't always. And to give them the benefit of the doubt, to treat them as intelligent beings will inspire intelligent action. Because kids love intellectual activity, and we sometimes think they don't, but that's on us if we're not doing the sorts of things that invite them in to experience intellectual activity. And so part of this takes a lot of time. This is the introductory piece, is make observations and talk about the artifact. And this is a little bit, it sounds a little unrelated, but it related. One of the things that people who do children's literature, you know, a picture book with kids, tell us that the researchers who have done these things say that when you want kids to really do an in-depth discussion of a book, you have to read it to them at least 6 times. And that, when I first read that, was a little bit staggering to me, 6 times on the same book. But the more we come back to it, the more we start to see things. And now the photograph doesn't necessarily have the richness of a children's book. So I'm not saying we have to go to it 6 times, but kids love repetition. If you know little kids, they like to do things over and over again. They learn more each time they do it. So don't be afraid to bring them back to it again. And so, okay, let's go back and let's look one more time. So don't rush it. That's a real quick introduction. It's really easy to talk about. It's super hard to do. So my last piece is, if you end up doing this, be patient with yourself. If you end up talking over them or not letting them talk and you think about it later, you just do better next time. Okay. So I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of this project. This project is based in what we call an inquiry model in the social studies, and it's this organization, or C3, or where it's citizen. Wait, oh, come on, Jerry. Something. What are the 3 C's? You're muted.
College, career, and civic readiness.
There we go. College, career, and civic readiness, and it's all about the sort of investigation. And it has 3 characteristics. And the reason that I'm spending some time on this is because this lesson plan is not intuitive, just to look at it and know what's going on. So I'm giving you a little bit of background as a way of overviewing this. It has questions, activities, and sources. And one of the questions is a compelling question. And the compelling question for this project is, why do we have symbols like the US flag? Now, a characteristic of a compelling question is there is not one answer to this, nor can the answer be obvious. So and sometimes the answer is obvious. Well, oh yeah, of course, there's a reason we have a symbol like the US flag. But when we start to delve into it, we start to figure out, well, wait a minute, is that really the only reason? And there might be multiple ways to this. And this is a pretty intellectual question, and we're going to ask it of 5-year-olds, because we think they can grapple with it. They see, and 5, 6, 7-year-olds and on, they see this flag in their classroom all the time. But why is it there? What's going on with that? And so we do this. We want to, again, you're going to see this theme, we want to generate interest. And we call this in C3 language, staging the question. Is getting them interested in seeing this question as something worth talking about, worth spending time with. So now I'm going to ask you to try it, which means this is so non-Zoomy. And sometimes, and I've done this in some places, it just is a horrible, horrible disaster. Nobody turns on their cameras, nobody talks. And I sit here and I think, why in the world did I do that? And other times it's just, we have really rich discussion. So I'm going to ask you to turn on your cameras, to unmute your microphones, and I'm going to ask you to talk. But if you're uncomfortable talking, you can also enter things in the chat. We're going to make those as 2 options to take advantage of this particular format. So here's what we want to try. Why do you think we have a flag? Any answer is okay. And if you could just, if you're more comfortable raising your hand, you can, but I can't see most of you. So you can.
Well, I was asking.
Thank you.
I was going to say, I was asking my boss this over Teams, that question. Why is there the flag, And we both kind of thought the same thing, kind of indoctrination, kind of a little bit of brainwashing. I mean, I don't know. Okay. Why is it there?
Wow, Anne.
Well, sort of when you say
indoctrination, I thought you were being honest, because that's exactly what came into my mind.
Okay.
I thought we were having a private side
But that's exactly what jumped into my head, was that. So it's like,
because you say the Pledge of Allegiance, you used to every morning in the classroom, and you gotta have something to pledge to.
Right? I would. Okay, so we have it there so we can pledge allegiance to it. Is that what you're saying, Dolly?
Yeah, that's why it was in every classroom I was in
Okay.
in the 70s
Okay.
and 80s. It was, we all stood, we all said the pledge together, we all put our little hands over our hearts and
Okay.
pledged allegiance.
I would call it a touchstone. It's something
Okay.
that we have kind of like a group agreement about, that we know that there's camaraderie in it.
Okay. Great.
Lorraine?
Keep going. You're doing great. Lorraine.
I would say it's something to rally behind or something to rally around.
Okay, say more about that, Lorraine. What do you mean?
Well, thinking about like flags have been around for I think millennia, where opposing groups or sides or what have you have used the flag to identify who you are with and perhaps who you are not with. And I think there's been flags since probably humans started being a human. So yeah, I think it's just my experience with the Army. It's something to rally around.
Okay. Well, so I mean, just go ahead, Jerry.
I was just gonna, just to expand on that, I'm just wondering, like, I've talked to people in my travels internationally, and they talk about visiting the United States and just how overwhelmed they are with seeing the number of flags that we tend to have in this country. And so that makes me wonder about why our country might be unique in that. I think about my own experience after 9/11. There were a lot less flags pre 9/11, and there were a lot more posts, and it's sort of kept up. So kind of considering what is it about our country that makes the flag particularly poignant or unique, and maybe it's that pledge in the classrooms. Maybe that gets to your point.
So Jerry, are you thinking maybe that's also this notion of a way of pride? I mean, Dave says a rallying point, but it's sort of something that we're proud to demonstrate pride, as opposed and indoctrination. We've got that one going too. We'll keep them all
or even just like a homogenization of certain beliefs or values. You know,
I think these days it represents. People try to have it represent patriotism, which is sometimes a little mindless, but patriotism is an awfully big word for young children. So I don't know about
that. But they might express the sentiment even if they don't use the word.
Yeah. I don't know if this is true, but if maybe we're not the only country whose national anthem is all about our flag, like our identity, and a lot of when we think of America, like red, white, and blue, the Star Spangled Banner, that's one of the first visual symbols that was going to leap to most people's minds, particularly because it is ubiquitous and it's in every classroom if we go to public school growing up.
Yeah, and I think there's more that we need to cover, so I should probably wrap this up. But I do think when we talk about, and you say patriotism is a big idea for young kids, yes, and yet we ask them from kindergarten on to stand and pledge the flag. So it might be a good idea for them to know exactly what those values or those things are that we're asking them to adhere to.
So thank you. We do have to keep things moving, but thanks to those of you who were willing to turn on your cameras and jump in. And what I think is really fun here, and what will happen with kids too, and if had this been an actual classroom, I would have been writing down the general ideas to help us all keep track of it. So we call that a public text, so that we can see what different people have said, so it doesn't get lost. There, I think that gives you a sense of the kinds of conversations that kids will have as we do this. And then another, Then sort of as if that were to dry up, one of the questions I might talk with them about, well, does the flag itself suggest answers to why we have it? And then that would lead us into why these colors? Why those stars? Why these stripes? Because in some ways, the flag itself, flags carry meaning, and whoever created them typically had some sense of what that meaning, they intended that meaning to be. So that would then lead us in to the first question that we have. So now I'm going to do a quick project walkthrough for you we're hopefully interest is generated. You're seeing this as a question that's worth talking about. And so that's the compelling question. And then in this method of working with kids, there are supporting questions. And each question has activities and things that you do with it. And we have these 3 supportive questions, which they're supporting the larger question of why do we have a flag? But these questions tend to have more of a right of an answer that we're going to help kids see. So we're asking them, what are the symbols on the American flag and how have those symbols changed over time? We're going to take a close look at the flag, trying to figure that out. We're going to look at flags from 1776. We're going to look at flags from now. We're going to look at flags. There's actually a flag for when the 51st state is added. Did you know that? So we're going to look at that flag. There's all sorts of things that we can look at and explore. And then we're going to think about this big question is, why do people display flags? So here's what the symbols mean. Here's how it's changed, but why is it ubiquitous? What are people saying in these different situations? And just to give you a quick preview, within the lesson, we introduced to kids that symbols can have multiple meanings. And so we use the word coffee, and we help them think about coffee as a drink and coffee as a color. And coffee has actually more meanings than that. It's like, let's go out for coffee. You don't have to drink coffee when you do that. But so we play with the word coffee as a way of thinking of this same flag, this same symbol can have more than one meaning, depending on how it's used, where it's used, and what it's used for. And then this is where we're asking museums to come in. What symbols have people created for your community? And why do you think these symbols were created? So once kids have taken kind of a deep dive into the US flag, we're going to ask to shift to their own context. And we're hopeful, and teachers can do this without a museum with a little internet research, but we're really hoping that there is a connection between museums and schools to start to think about the values, the sorts of things that are in our community, why they were created, why people use them, and what they say about us as a people in wherever it is that you are. I realize, all of this detail is found on the Civic Learning Council website. And there's a PDF we'll be sending out the slide stack if you need it. I'm going to click on it, and I hope, did that change what you're seeing? Okay, excellent. So this is the PDF that you would see if you would go, and things are organized in ways that if you're not familiar with it can be confusing. So let me do a quick rundown. The things in the grayed area are sort of standard things that we would do when we're writing a lesson plan like this. We just did a bit of staging the question, and then there are links in here that will show you if you're talking about. As we're thinking about the symbols in the American flag, sometimes it's helpful to look at symbols in other flags to help us think about those. So we've included links to show you flags from many countries, so we can see the difference of circles and all sorts of things that go on, which is all really, really interesting, and I don't have time to spend time with it. But then each of the 3 supporting questions, they happen vertically. So the first question, the symbols of the American flag and how they've changed over time, this is what we're suggesting kids might do once the task is over, is they might look at 2 pictures and sort of identify 2 pictures of the American flag and identify the differences and why they think that changed, or they might identify what different pieces on the flag represent. And then we have sources of things that you can use, like images of the American flag from 1775, and then the very bottom, I hope I'm not making anybody nauseous here, looping through this, is the proposed flag with 51 stars to be used if a 51st state is added. And then there's all sorts of things in between, and they show you how it changed when different states were added. I mean, I could spend all day. And then there's a short history of the American flag, which is also super interesting about how it came to be and what the originators decided the colors would mean and all of that. Then once we've sort of brought that one down, we go to think about why do people display flags, and we do the mini lesson, and we have all of these. We have included a number of photographs for you to use. So we might think about what do you notice about this picture with the flag displayed outside of an ice cream shop? What is being communicated in this situation? What about if it's next to a gravestone? And what is that saying? And this happens to be a signer of the Declaration of Independence. We chose that on purpose. Other ones is, here's a flag out in the middle of the woods. What are people saying about that? What does that mean? And here's a flag at the state capitol next to the Washington state flag, next to the MIA flag. We found this and got permission to use it from the Yakima Herald of the Yakima tribe displaying the American flag, thinking about that. Here's flags at half-mast and what it means when a flag is at half-mast. Here's flags at the Peace Arch when we have Canada and the US flags. What does it mean in that situation? The flag on the moon. Why did we plant a flag on the moon? What does it mean? What is going on there? And then now we're stepping a little outside of the US. Here's the European Union flags. And what are they saying by displaying those? And then this is also a lovely one. These are flags flying over a hotel in Scotland. Why is the US flag flying over a hotel in Scotland? As we sort of change these contexts and think about, we get to the question, which I'm sorry, I'm going to close your eyes if you can't, I'm going to leap through quickly. We get back to the question of, why do people display flags? And we start to see that there are multiple reasons, and kids can kind of get this. And then we go to the third supporting question, which is where we're hoping you will come in, which is, what symbols have people created for your community? And why have those symbols been created? And so we're, like I said before, and we're going to ask you to think about symbols that exist in your community and how you might bring those into classrooms and share them as resources for people to use. And one last thing, and then I'll turn it over to Jerry. I realize we have a whole series of enrichment activities. So things that you can do with kids that are kind of extra. Like, here's in the 2025 legislative session, there was a bill introduced to redesign the Washington state flag. And there's a link there that will take you to what was the rationale and why do they want to reintroduce it. And so we could engage kids in recreating or the Washington state flag, or arguing that it stays the way it is, right? So as a way to sort of cement in this idea that flags have meaning, symbols have meaning, and people use them for particular purposes, okay? And I think I'm gonna let Jerry go.
Whew, man, but such a rich, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Such a rich lesson. And thanks for sharing that, Terry. Really appreciate it. And Terry and Margaret McGuire, who is well known for a lot of her work in the social studies as well, put that together on behalf of the Washington State Council for Social Studies and the Washington Civic Learning Council. So I have 30 years of experience in the classroom, 25 in the classroom, 30 in public education. So one of the things that we thought would be helpful for you is we often hear from museums and other that we do work in, that they really struggle with knowing where to start in connecting with schools. So like, we really want to do this, maybe it's in elections. And I've worked with, when I was at OSPI, I worked with county auditors on improving their communication, because there's 16 and 17-year-olds have the opportunity to do voting registration early, and they want to help with that process. And so we really want to try to connect the dots between schools. Oftentimes it feels like there's a moat around schools. You shall not pass, with Gandalf there with his staff. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's not the way the schools want it. We just know that those systems work differently. And so you may not know who to go to or how to approach that conversation. So we wanted to just spend a few minutes talking about that, in case that's something that you're wondering as well. So one thing that's you may not surprise you is that teaching, most teachers stay in one place for around 5 years. And so oftentimes there's turnover. I used to do a lot of work within the Squally tribe when I was in Yulm Community Schools and in North Thurston School District as an educator, and it was pretty constant that there were going to be, every time that we did something with Nisqually, every year we were going to have some sort of a reintroduction because 30% of our teaching staff had turned over. Perhaps 30% or more of the people that we worked with in the tribe were also turning over. So there was a lot of turnover. So we want to make sure that we're establishing systems so that the work that we're doing is not reliant on one motivated individual, because when that motivated individual disappears, they're losing out with a bunch of students on an opportunity to have a really rich learning experience. So some things to just think about, and I don't want to read directly off the slide because I know how much everybody loves it when you just read verbatim. But the first thing that I would say is to make sure that you get familiar with what is being taught in the districts around you. And I just did, I'm not going to do the whole stop share and reshare thing because it gets super clunky, and clearly my computer is not liking that right now. But I went just before this meeting onto Tacoma School District. I just typed into Google Tacoma School District's scope and sequence, and that took me immediately to their learning and teaching department. I clicked on that, and then they showed for K-12, this is what each content area does. It had they do what we call an education power standards, which is that there's so many standards and so many subjects that they basically decide that they're going to concentrate on a select number of them in order to make sure that they're doing a richer and deeper dive into those standards rather than trying to touch all of them at once. And so they have created these power standards, and they're for each grade level. And they're, so those are things that you can click on to see what it is the district is really wanting to do. And that, for smaller districts, they may not have all of that available to them. They may not have a website that has the scope and sequence, but once again, reach out to their learning and teaching person. They often have their phone number directly on the website. And if they don't have it on the website, you can just cold call the front office and say, we're a museum, we're looking to have this conversation with your learning and teaching department about ways that we can support your work in social studies in elementary. And we would love, and you can also get some points by saying, and we're also going to do some integration of the arts and ELA by having kids use their literacy skills and their, they're asking higher order thinking skills, and maybe doing some drawing or whatnot with that as well. So just really reaching out to those people at the district office to tell them what you can offer as far as your museum goes or your historical society. Districts usually have curriculum instruction staff, so reach out there first. That's what I would say, rather than going to individual teachers. And if you are working with individual teachers, you've got those history nerds that we all know, myself included, who are already doing outreach or doing work with the museum. Ask them to do an introduction via email or whatever the case may be, or get a coffee on a Saturday morning. I know that can be, everybody's got a lot on their plates, but especially just really easy via email to have them introduce you to the people in their district who might be able to help systematize this work. So just making sure that that's happening. Bing, next. Obviously, you all are probably aware, because you all rely on grants and everything else, that we're in a really difficult financial situation at the state and federal level as far as grants and other monies that are available to schools. The school district I used to work in, and that my wife is still a second grade teacher in, hasn't passed a levy in a couple of years, right? So they have a real hard time with having resources to go out and do work. So, but this is an opportunity for you. And it's an opportunity in a few sort of ways. Number one is, are there volunteers, are there docents or other people on your museum or your historical society staff who would be willing to visit a classroom? And if so, figuring out what the protocols are for that. And that's usually on the website, or also available on the phone call, is to say, hey, we would love to come in and volunteer at schools and to bring artifacts in and to do some of these lessons for America 250. what do I need to do in order to get cleared to do that? And some school districts have, you know, you have to get fingerprinted and do a whole bunch of stuff. Sometimes those costs are covered. Sometimes they have a less rigorous protocol, but just being familiar with what that takes, because a lot of times people feel like they can just show up to a school with their stuff and they're good to go. And with school protocols these days, that can be a little bit more complicated. So just doing a little bit of forethought about what it would take for you to come into a classroom or into a school or to a district is good to know. And then maybe getting a few of your staff, you know, cleared so that they have that opportunity to go. And generally, if you're cleared with one building, you're cleared for all the buildings within the district. And then can you create virtual visits or artifact boxes? So if you don't have the resources to bring kids to your organization or your historical society, your museum, are there ways for you to bring the museum to them, right? Are there things that you can do either through a slide deck like we're doing right now, where you include some of those visual images and maybe have somebody zoom into a classroom? Most classrooms are equipped for a Zoom call or other ways to get experts into the classroom without having to necessarily be physically present. What can you do to help get your materials into the classroom? You know, obviously the best case scenario is that we get kids to museums as much as possible, or that we get museum staff into the classroom, but are there ways for us to sort of mitigate where those challenges are, right? And then are there ways for you to spark interest prior to this work? Is there a way for you to offer families, perhaps through a school, discounted admissions or an educational event, like a window of time at your museum or your historical society where they might be able to come free of charge or the discounted rate, and to talk to experts or to do tours of certain artifacts that you may have available? You know, is there a way for you to sort of make that happen and connect it to the Washington 250 sort of messaging and such?
Yeah, can I just interject really quickly?
Absolutely.
The on the lesson plan, there's also the culminating project for kids, and they're either analyzing symbols or creating symbols. And we just think a really nice connection, if you could set up a display of their work in the museum and have then a night where parents and kids can come see their work displayed. I think that could be a really nice way to bring people in.
Yep. And then if you have any local press left, you call your local newspaper or your local radio station, let them know what's going on. Those are great ways to get positive at school districts and for you to get some really positive press on that. And also being aware that there are, as there are in many places with schools, you know, certain clearances you have to get perhaps to have video or audio published or pictures published of students. So just being aware of what those policies are as well, and making sure that you're working with the district to make sure that that's all on the up and up. And then finally, most teachers, especially in elementary, are not trained historians. They tend to be generalists, right? The people who are history nerds often go up to the secondary level where they can kind of hone in on their passion. But there are, you know, as we know, there are elementary teachers who catch that bug and are just really great advocates and representatives of historians. But what can you do to help sort of scaffold around teachers who may either be afraid to do this work or just unsure about what it takes to bring this into their classroom? And classrooms these days are very regimented with the amount of time they have for reading and for math, and social studies and science may get 15 or 20 minutes every other day or less sometimes. Sometimes it's a block with some more time. But oftentimes the amount of time that they have for social studies education is really limited. So whatever we can do to sort of make that the best opportunity possible with the most bang for their buck is going to be really helpful. So what can you do to offer and support inquiry and exploration of artifacts? And then are there ways, as Terry was mentioning, to connect student work to your exhibits? So having something in the museum that shows off student work, et cetera. And that's going to bring in parents and grandparents and uncles and aunts and other people who are going to be excited to see that work in a public setting. And then we just have a quick note underneath. The Civic Learning Council is really lucky, honored, privileged to have the Council of Trial Lawyers at BODA has done a really nice thing of underwriting the organization and providing quite a bit of, well, I shouldn't say quite a bit because it's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but it's more than is available most places. We do have a budget for grants, and it's a really easy application process for either teachers or museums or anybody else who wants to apply. You just simply have to say, what is the activity that you're engaging students in? What is the benefit? Can you share any pictures or other artifacts from that we're allowed to display on our website? And basically just talking about what was the benefit of this activity at the end. So it's a really quick application process. It's a pretty easy approval process. Very few organizations get denied. Some get partial funding depending on how our budget is and whatnot. But in general, we tend to fund things that come across our table. So if you're not aware of those grants, they're on the Civic Learning Council website. It's just civiclearningcouncil.org/grants. So feel free to use that to leverage dollars to help you support this work as you try to get into classrooms. Bing. All right. So we have, I don't know, are we circumventing the breakout sessions, Terry, in the interest of time? Or do you want to do sort of a public
sorry, Jerry,
query?
I don't know. It just automatically went there and then
not a problem.
But we are down to about 11 minutes. So
we are. So I do wonder if we just sort of pose these questions to y'all and have you kind of share out, and maybe that'll help other people in the group. So some questions we were hoping to have you think about and to share with us, because we want to be as responsive as we can in this work as well, is number one, how feasible does it feel to you to partner with schools around 250, particularly with this project? What additional supports that we haven't mentioned do you think you might need to help engage in this work? And then how comfortable are you, which is kind of the first question, but a little bit different, with your organization's ability or capacity? Do you have the people power to put this on your plate? Because we'd like to know that as well. So I'll just leave those questions up there. And if you'd be willing to come off of mute or put it in the chat, we would love to hear from you.
Or any other questions or comments you have too, remaining time. These are just suggestions.
Okay. It feels feasible. I think you guys have given us the tools here, and we appreciate that. I'm sure that a lot of questions can be answered off of the information that's on the website and the materials on there too. Comfort level, we have a pretty active group of people between the museum staff and the volunteer staff and the Historical Society. We're all very involved. A lot of people that live locally too and have lived there for a long time have a lot of friendships within the town, longstanding. So we have had a presence in our local schools previously. I think it dropped off because of COVID and we haven't really re-engaged. So that's what we're looking at doing now.
That's
awesome.
Great. Thank you. And Jeremy, where are you?
DuPont, I was just reading. I did a little intel.
Yes, DuPont Historical Society.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Harry and I are educators, so we're seasoned wait time people. So we will be happy to sit and wait for you to get
I will
ready.
jump in real quickly. I do need to leave as well for another meeting, but I think that these are great questions. I think it's feasible at this point in response to your first question. But I don't know, not being an educator, it seems like it's really hard to crack our local school bureaucracy. As you say, they're very busy, and budgets are stretched, and but it just seems like it's kind of hard to get to the people we need to talk to. So I think your opening comments about trying to find those was very helpful. I appreciate the fact that you have grants, and I've got really good ideas about that. So we'll be able to wanted to check out your website about your grant availability and grant cycle and how to apply for those. What is our comfort level? My response is I don't think we have a really good capacity at this point, but we're trying to expand our what I call our education committee and build that up, build the education committee so that we do have that capacity to do a lot of these, a lot of the ideas that the great ideas that you've been showing us. So we're working on that. I want to get more people, more educators involved with us to expand our capacity. So we're working towards that, but we're not there yet. So, but thank you very much for this, for this workshop.
Thanks, Greg, for those comments. One thing I would say I've never worked in museums. I just value what you do, but I don't exactly know what you do. But sometimes it's really, really helpful to just offer them in this lesson plan that is available for primary kids. It's for local symbols. Here's some symbols you might try. Just something to reach out to them might be so much better than nothing. And I think they would really appreciate it. And it might inspire them to actually do these too. Because as you say, they're really busy.
As a matter of fact, Terry, Aaron, who just left the meeting to go to a meeting that I need to get to, has been working on a draft curriculum about our museum and the Bigelow family and their role in local and state history. So so that's pretty exciting that we will have something exactly that you're saying that we can offer to teachers.
Yeah.
Great.
That's wonderful.
Steve, I see your hand up. And thanks so much, Greg. Really appreciate your comments.
If I could just quick build off of Greg too, I think one thing that I'm excited about seeing this and kind of that knowing that challenge of trying to break into to build those relationships with schools. I am really excited about the curriculum and being able to have this something that's like ready-made, something that's ready-made that has a tie-in to the museum. And I also think there's an opportunity if any of the museums out here are participating in our Out of Many One program for America 250. That is really based around an object from the museum's collection. I think could really tie in really nicely into this idea of picking an object that has, symbolic meaning. So we're also hoping that a lot of these things create, some opportunities where it's not as heavy of a lift, that you can kind of combine a couple of these things that are happening all around this America 250 moment. So it's not, creating 50 new things, but maybe it's, being able to kind of package together a few things nicely together. So.
Dave, did you have something? You unmuted there for a moment. Did you have something you wanted to add?
It's always tough to follow Dylan. But I'm a 30-year educator also, community education principal, second, third grade teacher. So I kind of know the gig, I guess, but it's been 25 years since I retired. I now consider myself a museum person.
Okay.
Importantly, our board is made up of several educators. So we stand in a good position, I think, because we're hiring a new half-time education person through King County Doors Open for culture funding. So right on the cusp of breaking through. We have some good relationship with the school district, but it's been 6 or 7 years since we did much with that. So it's fallow ground, and I'm pretty excited about the resources that you've laid out here, and you remind me of the good old time with the kids. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yes, absolutely.
Any final questions, wonderings, offerings for the group about this really wonderful kind of project and invitation to engage with teachers and students? I know many of you on this call have heard me say it before, but as I've got the funnest job in the world. I get to just travel around and visit local history museums and learn and encourage and assist. And the strongest, time and again, the strongest organizations that I see have really rich relationships with their local schools. And that's often been because somebody who's a volunteer was a former teacher and has seen that as a priority. But when you get the kids in, then they come back with their parents, and then they bring their kids back. And it just, when you're looking at kind of sustaining an organization over time, prioritizing, service to the local school community, I think is a great strategy. And we, as Terry said, we've got the cool stuff, right? I mean, primary sources now more than ever, I think, are just precious and vital. And so, that's what we traffic in, right? That's our business, is primary source. So it's really, really exciting. I know that sometimes we log off from these calls and then think questions, ideas, curiosities kind of pop into your brain. So we will definitely share out the slides tomorrow and some of these links, but I know I'm going to speak for Terry and Jerry here that there's an invitation if questions or ideas or thoughts come up down the road that you would like to query them about. Jerry just dropped his email in there. I do have one question for you both before we sign off. So I'm really excited that you brought this idea to the museums, and we will continue to promote it for sure as we talk about 250. Are you similarly kind of taking it to teachers and trying to kind of get teachers excited about 250 and doing this project?
Yeah, we are. Jerry, you want to talk a little bit about Washington State Council or?
Sure. Yeah. So we are definitely, this will be part of our fall conference, and I'll just put it out there to all of your organizations that we are accepting proposals for and it is out of the theme for this year because of Washington 250 is Many Threads, One Flag. So the diverse stories of Washington State citizens and organizations. So we're trying to get as many diverse voices into the conference this year to talk about opportunities that they have to provide support to teachers in the classroom. So this is part of that work that we're doing. And Nancy Lenahan, president of the Washington State Historical Society, is now on the Washington Civic Learning Council. So we have a lot of cross-pollination, doing a lot of work with them. And they do, we're a teacher and law facing organization, civic facing organization. They are a little more deeply entrenched into the K-12 classroom space, just by the nature of the people who make up the council and such. They're all educators. So yeah, we have a really good working relationship with them, and we're looking forward to helping promote this work for the Washington State Historical Society and for the Civic Learning Council.
Go team! I love
Yay.
it. All right, Terry and Jerry, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that, learned a lot, and I think that this is a really accessible opportunity for teachers and students to get into their museums, and museums to really provide a meaningful and rich experience for kids. So look out for that email tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and just stay in touch. We'll be talking more about all of this stuff in the future. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks all.
Really appreciate the opportunity.
You bet.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for your time.